I'm Leonie and welcome to my channel. I'm taking you on a journey with me as I prepare for an exhibition that I'll be holding with friends next year in 2027. And yes, it does take a year to prepare for these things. I'll be starting a new body of work and I thought, what better time than now to invite you to come along with me on that journey. Now you'll be seeing some of the work that I've made previously. I'm really looking at this as an opportunity to do some stash busting, to work with a lot of the Gelli print plates that I've made in the past. And where I've already filmed those Gelli print videos, I'll be linking them in the description below so you can see how the process was done. Some of these will be 1 or 2 years old. So if you haven't been watching the channel for very long, you'll get an opportunity to go back and see those. Now, this is my design board, and I know that for a lot of people, it's a bit small. I don't actually have a studio. I work in various areas around my house, and this happens to be, as you can see on the back of a door, in an area where I often sit on the other side of the room so I can look and see what's happening with my designs. Now, this little bit is actually the first design that I started working on as an introduction to this exhibition. I have an initial goal in the next 3 months to produce a number of pieces of work which are going to be like a proof of concept, just developing initial ideas for the exhibition. So I will talk about all of these pieces. These are some of the sample pieces I've been working on so far, and I will go through all of these, but at the moment I'm going to save that for another episode, and I'll lead in by showing you how I start the project off, what I'm doing, what I'm selecting from my stash to work with, and how I go about that. So let's go find some fabric and get started. The first part of any project is getting your materials together. I want to shop my stash. A teacher of mine once pointed out that we spend a lot of time and energy trying to buy the right material, trying to find the perfect piece. Now, fine, I've been a textile artist for 20 years and I have a lot of material, but the main thing is don't go to the shop to buy new stuff. Go and look in a thrift store or an op shop. Look for the old tablecloths. Look for the old bits of sheets and pillowcases. Find a dress or a top that you like the fabric in. Now, the one proviso I'll put on that is probably your best bet is a woven fabric, not a knit fabric. They can be used, but they are a bit tricky to deal with. So there are plenty of options for finding fabrics that don't have to be brand new. And for the way I work, a brand new fabric is almost the last thing I want. But again, I'm using remnants. This channel's been all about making Gelli prints, so I have Gelli prints coming out of my ears. Some I love. I love these. How am I going to use them? So that's the other thing. I've got lots of choice. When I'm starting to look for fabrics for a project, I try and find maybe a key piece. It might be something like this. Is this the one piece that's capturing your imagination? How can I build on this piece? I then go and look through my stash and pick up all sorts of things. Now, this is an old pillowcase, beautiful design by the designer Orla Keeley, and got a hole in it. But I'm not tossing this material out. I'm keeping it because it's a lovely pattern and I like it. And in fact, I've been using this quite a bit lately, ever since this pillowcase died. This is material from a sewing project. Again, an old piece of sheeting. In terms of clothing and bedding, there's a lot of embedded energy already in these pieces. I don't throw these out willy-nilly. Even if you don't use a piece like this in your actual embroidery, I have larger pieces, and the soft sheeting, the worn sheeting, is really good as a backing for your project. You'll find, if you're like me, if you're a home sewer or even a quilter, you will have gathered colours that you like. Now, you can see from the sort of selection I've got here, I'm liking warm tones, I like earth colours, but I also want to go a little bit broader than that. Again, here's another piece which was a test piece for my little mini quilt, about the artist Pauline Boty. This is sparking my interest. This is one of the things I'm going to be working with in this project. I also have, because I started out as a quilter, I'd bought a lot of furnishing fabrics, some remnants. So what happens is, as you can see from here, this is a furnishing remnant. It's been part of a display of finishing fabrics. And I know that in a lot of places that many companies that deal with curtains or home furnishings will have these display books, which they sometimes sell. And I've bought back in the day, not recently, a lot of these. This is another piece that's also come from a fabric display book. So I've got a range of fabrics and I'm not 100% sure how they're going to go together. I've decided this image is something I really like. And so the first thing I just start doing is playing around. I've got all of these pieces of fabric here. What looks good with this? Does that look good? Does that work? Maybe I want to have something else. Maybe I want to bring in this. It can get really confusing really quickly, as you can see. So one of the things you do is you grab your phone camera, take a photo. So I take a photo of this section here. Is this what I want? Now, it can be fairly rough. I mean, at this stage, you're just trying to work things out. Take a photo, make another arrangement. Take this photo. You get the idea. It's not rocket science. And the other thing too, I have lots of samples left over from previous works. And I suddenly thought, well, maybe that sample works better. Does that work? Does this work? You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just playing. And one of the things I will do is, having taken these photos, I'll print these out on my computer and I'll just let them sit. I will pin them up. I've taken the photos that I took of all the combinations I thought might work, and I've printed them out. And then I've gone through them and looked at them and just decided which ones I like the best. So I picked 3 out of this lot, this one up here, this one down the bottom, and I just sort of say, this one here, when I took the photo, I didn't realise I had a piece of fabric hanging over the edge, and whilst it's like quote unquote a mistake, I actually thought that didn't look too bad. So it's something I will want to think about, maybe use it later. And the other thing which was a bit different was when I first set them up, I didn't register that I had 4 pieces rather than 3 pieces of fabric side by side. And I also quite liked that. So I then decided to go back in and have a look, working off this idea of 4 pieces of fabric and seeing whether I could make an arrangement that I liked out of those. And again, I quite liked a lot of them and decided that this was one that I really liked and I thought worked well. So using your colour printer, or if you don't have a printer, take your photos down to the local office works or office supply shop and get them to print you some coloured photos, because these will come in handy not just now, but later on. So in the end, this is the one that I've decided I liked the most. And I'm preparing the fabric, as you can see here, to set this up to do the initial layout for my fabric. Now, I do need to be, this is fairly rough and ready. I just put them all together. I do need to be a bit more careful when I go to do the actual fabric itself to do an alignment that works. There's a couple of things here. Firstly, this piece of fabric, I mean, I'm just dealing overall with a piece of fabric that's that wide. I don't know how many inches that is. I'm not worried about that particularly. But also too, when I printed this, you can see there's a gap down here and there's also a grey mark up here. So I don't particularly want those in this work. And this other piece of fabric I've got next to it is just exactly that width. Now, if I'm going to remove that section and this section, then that sits pretty right if I just put it over there. But I do need to leave, fairly obvious I think, but I do need to leave a place where I can sew, particularly if I decide to hem it or I want to put an edge around it. The same thing on this side. This is a larger piece of fabric and I'll be working probably with it like this, and don't want this section either. So I've got to get this piece of fabric. Now this unfortunately has got some sticky stuff, so I need to actually cut this so that I can get a nice edge to go there. One of the other things I think you need to think about, and it's not so obvious, it's probably a bit more obvious if I show you one here, is I want to look where things line up, particularly on this edge where her shoulder is. And I've just here found a piece of fabric where I can either put it there, it's a bit hard to see, but the line sort of continues into this other piece of fabric. And that is the sort of thing that you really need to pay attention to when you're doing this. When you're improvising with random bits of fabric, you need to work out where you might make a connection. The same thing over here, where I've got this very brightly coloured daisy, well, not daisy, it's flannel flowers. It's an Australian plant. But where am I going to put this in relation to this bit of fabric? So anyway, this is the sort of thing I will be thinking about before I go to the next step, which is pinning. I pin before I sew. This gives me more flexibility. I will join these together, but I won't necessarily join them just by sewing the bits together like that. I will be working out, can I follow the stitch off this shoulder and down into this fabric? Can I follow a line from here across into this fabric? And the other thing too, which I will be doing, is this will actually have a very fine backing cloth on it as well, because I must say when I stitch, I prefer, even if I have got, some overlapping fabric up here, I do actually like to have a cloth underneath which I can stitch through. It just gives everything a little bit more heft and makes the work much easier to manipulate and to stitch through. I hope you'll join me on this journey, and I hope that you enjoy looking at how I will go from zero to exhibition in a year. Please let me know if you've got any questions. I'm happy to answer questions. And like I said, I'll be putting links in the description below to some of the other techniques for the Gelli plate prints that I've made, which I'm using in this project. I'll see you later. Bye.